How many of you guys make a card and then somehow during your process you mess something up? I do it all the time, and in today's video I have 10 card making mistakes that a lot of us make, but ways you can fix them. So I think this will be helpful to anyone that makes mistakes. We're all human, right? So stay with me, we're gonna get right to it.
All right, so the first thing you gotta do is let it dry. All right, patience is not my virtue. Ask anyone who knows me, especially my husband. I'm going to stamp this image with some VersaFine Clear ink. It doesn't dry right away. It stays wet just a little bit, and if you rub your hand by accident, now of course I did it here intentionally for the sake of the video, but if you rub over it, it's going to smear. The same thing with the glitter marker or Nuvo drops, which I'm using here. Any kind of embellishments that are fluid, you gotta let it dry, because if you don't, it's gonna smear, and that's not something you can fix. The same thing with pigment ink. Pigment ink stays wet longer. So if you don't let the panel dry, or in my case, cheat and use a heat gun, because hello, I don't have patience, you're going to go and this is going to happen when you're doing heat embossing, or even if it's not dry, the ink is going to transfer onto your hands. So let your stuff dry. It's okay to dry. And when it's dry, you can move on to whatever step you're going to do, and everything will be just peachy. So we're going to get more into that along the video here, but you know, this looks a lot better than a big card panel full of white powder. All right, next up, use an anti-static tool before heat embossing. This is 5 seconds. Don't skimp, because it shows when you skimp. So I'm using some black cardstock and white embossing powder so it really shows up on camera, but I'm stamping the sentiment with some embossing ink, sprinkling on some white embossing powder, flicking off the excess, and heat setting, and this just, yeah, it's not looking very pretty. Lots of white all over the place. So this time I'm going to use my anti-static tool here. Hang with me. I'm going to tell you 2 other options you can use if you don't have this guy. And then I'll follow the same steps of inking, embossing powder, and heat setting. And you'll see the difference here as a result. If you're not a subscriber, I would love it if you would click on that red button down below and click that notification bell right to the right of it, and you'll be notified of all upcoming posts to my channel. So here I am finishing up this. I'm going to wipe away that powder with a dry rag and look at the difference night and day, top and bottom. If you don't have this little guy, you can use cornstarch from your kitchen. I've got it. I don't cook, so I don't ever use it. So hey, why not with crafting? You can also use baby powder as well. All right, so next up is clean your stamps. It's just not worth it to risk it. I'm going to ink up this image with some black ink. I'm even going to stamp it off to remove the ink off the stamp by stamping it off onto the paper there. Then I'm going to go in and ink it up with some gold ink, and yep, you are not going to get the color you intended. You're going to have a little color mix, and it's going to leave ink residue on the pad. So don't do that, all right? Just clean your stamp with water and a rag, wet wipe, cleaner, whatever you got. Just take a second and clean your stamp. And then you can ink up your image. You'll get a very pretty color. See that gold? That's what it was supposed to look like. And then you won't mess up your ink pad. To remove that ink, I'm just going to press my stamp over and over and over and over and over again onto that pad until that black comes up off my gold ink pad. And then all will be right in the world. So it took me a lot longer to kind of fix what the mistake I made rather than if I just would have cleaned my stamp to begin with. So clean your stamps, all right? And then you'll be happy and everything will be exactly how it should be in the world of ink. Next up is inky fingers. Clean your hands, all right? So here I am doing some ink blending. This is a ink that does sit on top of the paper. So when I was doing ink blending, you saw that I had to use my hands to hold the paper in place. Well, here I am. I didn't wash my hands in between the two. I'm doodling a flower onto some white cardstock, and I got my fingerprints on the white card panel. No. And then the back of the card has the ink because I didn't clean my work surface either. So that stinks. So if I did something very intricate on that card, it would be ruined because I would have my fingerprints all over it. So clean your surface. Just keep a rag. I have a spray bottle always near me, and I can clean my work surface as I go. And the same thing with your hands. If you don't want to stop and go wash your hands, then at least spray some water in your hands and wipe it off on a rag. Trust me, it's worth it. Next up is warped paper. If you do any kind of watercoloring or heat embossing or anything like that, you might find your paper is all warped and cockeyed. Well, what you can do is take a heat tool and just rotate on the front and the back and apply constant heat. And by the time you're done, it will be pretty flat. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll be a lot flatter than when you started. Or if you have time, just put something heavy on it like an acrylic block and walk away. Bada bang, bada boom. Ink smudges. Oh, the dreaded ink smudges. You do something beautiful and a little something something gets there, whether it's your fingerprint because you didn't clean your fingers or paint in this instance. Well, I'm taking an X-Acto knife. Now this takes some time, but I'm just very lightly just scratching the paper, and then I'm constantly brushing away any of the paper that's coming up. So with a light hand, I'm scratching, I'm brushing the paper away, scratching, brushing the paper away. Then when I'm done, this is a sand eraser. You can probably use a regular eraser too, just to kind of smooth it out. Now, if you know to look for it, you'll still see it, but in most cases, your recipient will never know it's there. Now, you can also cover it up with word dyes or embellishments, or in my case, because this is very easy to do, I just put a sentiment strip over the top of it, call it a day. Oh, and if you don't line your sentiment straight up perfectly, you can just cut a strip of pattern paper like I did here, that black and white, and line that up, and then it'll look like your sentiment went on straight. Oh, yeah. Upside down. Who has put their card panel on upside down? Have no fear, I'll turn that frown upside down. I do this all the time. So in this case, I would either just rip up the panel and adhere it down to another piece of cardstock, but here I was able to just get out my paper trimmer, use scissors if you got them, and I'm just going to cut this apart, and then I'll take that top panel and adhere it to another pre-folded and scored card base. Nobody's ever going to know. So when in doubt, just try to cut it out and glue it onto your card base. And yeah, I do this all the time, you guys. You have no idea. No idea. And last but certainly not least, a stamp positioner. I can't tell you how many times I just, on hard images or images, I don't know, certain things I just use my acrylic blocks for, but these, should always use my MISTI. So here I am inking up a floral image here with some black ink, and hello, that's not a good image. I either missed inking or I didn't put pressure down where I should have. So I'm going to ink that up. It's a clear stamp on a clear acrylic block. I should be able to line this up, and I took my time trying to line this up to get it perfect. I see everything's lined up right there. I'm going to press down, lift up, and yeah, no, that is not right. No, that looks like a psychedelic flower. So if I just to grab my MISTI to begin with, that's the stamp positioner I like. I love the MISTI. And I just keep that paper mounted in the same spot. It's just tucked in that right-hand corner. I can use a magnet or not to hold that paper in place. Then I will go ahead and close the hinge door on the top and pick up my stamp. I had some ink residue left over, so that would have been a whole mess if I wasn't using the MISTI. So I'll ink up my image. I didn't ink it up very well for the sake of this video, but I'll go ahead and stamp it. And yeah, that's not perfect. That paper has not shifted. Even if it had, I knew I could just put that right up there in the right-hand corner, right where it was to begin with, and then I can re-ink my image, stamp again, and I'm good. Top of that flower is not looking all that inked. I'll just ink it up and keep doing it. I could do this over and over and over again. I can do ombre inking, all kinds of things, because this MISTI ensures that my paper is where it's supposed to be. So I will get perfect alignment every single time. So let's see which one used the MISTI stamp positioner and which one didn't. You tell me. I think you know.
Which one of those mistakes resonate with you the most? I probably do the panel. Yeah, it's the upside down panel for sure. All right, I have one video for you that's all about INKY, and it is right here. Click below and you'll see it. And I'll be back very soon with another video, and I can't wait to see you. Bye.